What was your oh hell no moment that made you leave your relationship? My ex-boyfriend was angry his mom woke him up at 10 in the morning via phone call, so after the call, he punched a hole in his door, threw his phone at the window, woke me up forcefully and yelled at me to buy a new door, so his parents wouldn't kick him out. I had just been medically discharged from the Navy, honorable, and not relative to backstory other than to set mood. I started dating a girl I met around 2 weeks after returning home, and 6 months into the relationship she developed a tumor, cancer, and I had to drive her to radiation therapy and doctor's appointments 2 to 3 times a week. We lived around an hour apart, but we made it work, and I'd drive to her after I got out of college classes and drop her off at her appointments, go back to another class, and then come pick her up and take her home. Fast forward a year later into the relationship, her younger sister informed me that she had been lying to me the entire time, and that she in fact did not have cancer, but was using me to drop her off to her side piece who worked at the hospital. To make it worse, both of her parents knew about it and neither felt it was necessary to inform me. Never saw her again, never even really ended it, just never went back her way, and have been better for it ever since. We were having out at his house, and he kept pressuring me to be intimate. I was still a young, naive virgin, so I refused. We started watching a movie instead. I went to the bathroom and he stole my car keys. Once I was back on the couch, he started trying to take off my clothes. I was scared, so I grabbed my purse to leave. That's when he jingles my keys. He said I could have them back once I slept with him. I just ran outside and called my dad. My dad showed up and threatened to beat his ass if my keys weren't returned. Got my keys and got out. He continued to stalk me for the next 7 years. She was intimate with multiple other people, and when confronted she physically assaulted me. I walked out the door with her following and smacking me in the back of the head. Best thing that ever happened to me. Taught me how to appreciate decent people and to not compromise my own comfort to excuse others' bad behavior. The relationship that followed that one has lasted 24 happy years. When I was 16 over 17, I dated a guy who was in town for the summer. He was so cool, I thought, and I had a car, so I would drive us on dates and junk. He really made my heart flutter. If I said no to him, he'd get upset a bit, but it didn't seem to be a huge issue. Like, if he wanted me to drive him somewhere, to drop him off, to hang with his friends, normally I would, but a few times it was like a 30-minute drive, and I said no. Then he hit me once. We were in the car and he wanted me to drop him off at a girl's house and I asked why. He wouldn't really answer and then admitted that he was using me for my drug connections and my car. I was surprised and said no. I'd drop him off where he was staying and then we were done. He hit me. I pulled over and kicked him out of my car and drove away. When I had been the sole breadwinner for 15 months, then husband was physically and mentally healthy, deeply in debt, house was always filthy, hadn't hung out with my friends in a year, and hadn't been intimate for a few months. I was standing on a chair tying a noose to an I-beam in the basement when it occurred to me that I was basically letting this guy kill me, so I walked instead. She got really upset at me at a party, nothing I did, and started a huge verbal argument. Then I demanded that we leave because it was inappropriate to do this as guests in someone's home. On the way to our place, she hit me a bunch of times demanding answers for someone that I slept with before we even met. She got even more angry and physically violent once we got home, to the point where I had to restrain her before she hurt me or herself for that matter. She screamed to let me go and that if I didn't she would scream for the police. She looked me in the eye then said, "Who are they going to believe?" For context, we are both roughly 5 minutes and 11 seconds, but I've got about 80 pounds on her. I'm a black man. She's a white woman. I have never been more afraid of being shot by the police than that night. My best friend is female. We have been friends for 18 years. Was out with a new GF and ran into New York friend at the mall. Friend hugged me and I introduced her and I thought all was well until we got home. She freaked out and said she broke girl code and I wasn't allowed to talk to her anymore. Side note, she had male friends that I didn't freak out over. I pointed that out and she said it's different. You're a guy, to which I said she has issues and this wasn't going to work out, and I never looked back. I'm not throwing away a lifelong friend. to appease a jealous girlfriend. I woke up at 3 AM to my partner of 11 years muttering at me when he thought I was asleep. His tone was so dark and disturbing I felt that if I hadn't woken up to hear him, I may not have woken up at all. He wasn't loud, so maybe it was the way he was speaking that made me wake up like I did, but my brain was immediately on high alert. I snapped awake and alert in an instant and just knew that I should just stay still and quiet and not let him know I was awake. What came out of him were all sorts of wild accusatory delusions spat at me with so much venom that 6 years later I still clearly remember the feeling of dread that washed over me. My whole body was weighed down with it. Our relationship wasn't a great one by any means, but it was the first time I genuinely felt afraid of what he would do. I was afraid to speak up, but also afraid that if I stayed quiet and let him keep on his rambling, that it could progress into something worse, and if it came to it, I could never have fought him off. That's when it really clicked to me how seriously he needed professional intervention, and that I was not only unable to help him, but also that I needed to get out from under the same roof as him as soon as possible. Paranoid schizophrenia is really something, and the available mental health care in our area is a joke. In 1999, my third GF and I had standing plans to hang out on weekends. Well, one weekend I went over to her place to find that no one was home. I tried calling the following day, no answer. So I tried later in the day, no answer. Next day same thing, left a message, same thing each day for a week. At first I was just concerned something had happened to her, but by a week later with no response I was pretty sure she'd ghosted, though ghosting wasn't a term back then, so I gave up. Well, 2 days later I get a call from her. It turned out her and her family had gone on a trip to Chicago, and she didn't think it might be a good idea to let me know. When I asked her why she didn't let me know, her response was something to the effect of she didn't owe it to me to inform me. My basic response was that if she cared about me, she would have let me know, so I wouldn't worry about her just disappearing for over a week. I dumped her and refused to take her back. He refused to use soap. Yes, this includes hand soap. He believed that water and scrubbing was enough to keep yourself clean, and it was important not to strip your body of its natural oils. I must admit, he did have really nice hair and skin, but he always smelled bad, and I could not get over the fact that he didn't even use soap after using the bathroom. I have no clue what he does if his hands get sticky or really dirty. I didn't stick around long enough to find out. Thankfully we never got physical or made it official, but we talked and went on dates for a month, and I still get the ick when I think about him. It was already heading down that way, but what got me was one day when he invited his friend to my house without telling me while I was at work, and when I came home, they started talking about my cat who they thought should put down because she was feral, and given the chance they would do so. They claimed she was feral simply because she spent the first weeks of her life outside before she had her leg amputated and found her way to me. X didn't like her because 1, I'd gotten her when I was with a previous ex, and 2, she was mean to him because she didn't like the way he handled her and never listened to her warnings to leave her alone. Came home from work. She was in the kitchen happily making us dinner. Went to bathroom. Was in the middle of washing my hands when I thought of something I had to tell her. Untreated, and as I come around the corner I just barely see her drop something into my bowl, like her hand was cupped over it and she slipped something in it, and it just looked really sketchy. She didn't see me see her, so I just walked back into the bathroom, finished washing my hands, told her thank you so much for making me dinner, but I just wasn't hungry. Then I spent most of the night awake thinking, what did I just see her trying to do? Around 3 AM I'm convincing myself I imagined it, and that I just need to get up and go pee and get some sleep. And then my very next thought was, man, my sausage really itches. I went up to the clinic the very next day, got tested for STDs, just to confirm what I already suspected. Positive. It was the antibiotic. That's what she put into the soup she made me. Called my sister, told her I needed to stay with her for a few weeks, went home, packed up one backpack full of the absolute essentials and a trash bag for all my clothes, threw both in the car, went back in, and said, I know you cheated on me, and there is no sense in denying it. When we started getting serious I told you that I could compromise on just about everything. But cheating was something I could never under any circumstances get past. That if you cheated on me, there would be no discussion, no explanations, no working it out. I wouldn't leave angry, but I'd just leave. Because the relationship is now over, so goodbye. Tell your kids whatever you want to. She had 2 kids from a previous marriage. Blocked all her communication on my way to my sister's. Told her what happened when I got there, and we stayed up all night drinking and crying and laughing at the ridiculousness of it all. She cheated on me, infected me, then tried to cure me, so I'd never know, which crazily enough probably would have worked, except I just happened to see her do it. Something that never should have happened, because what kind of lunatic just leaves the bathroom in the middle of washing their hands to tell someone they live with something? I was weeks from proposing to this woman. And then sometimes people talk about moments that define their lives, or days that they will never forget, the most important days of their lives. How about seconds? 1 second, that's about how long of a window I had to watch her put the antibiotic into my food and slink backward into the bathroom without her seeing me. On either side of that 1 second window my life would possibly be very different. It's just so crazy to think about.